Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the Audit and Control Committee meeting for July 20th, 2023 to order. If everyone's had an opportunity to read the minutes from the last meeting, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
I'll make the motion, Chair.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Privilege of the floor. Is anyone here to speak to the privilege of the floor? Not seeing any, we'll move on to our resolutions. First resolution on our agenda today is the tabled resolution, modification of membership of North Chautauqua County Water District Administrative Board. Is anyone here to speak about that today?
Take no action.
Do you want to table it again?
No, we do. We just don't take action. What we do is forget. That's a lot of money. Great, Patrick just has to talk.
Patrick, thank you for being brave.
That's loud. I'm sorry. Good morning, Patrick Slagle, County Attorney. Here to speak on a resolution before you. Based on some conversations, pending decisions by the state comptroller, the decision that has been made to change some of the membership on the North Chautauqua County Water District Board. Right now, the board and CBI, which is a collection of towns and villages that buy water from the North Chautauqua County Water District, the boards are very similar in scope and who's on those boards. It gets quite confusing, honestly, who's on what board and what role they're playing. So the idea here is to change the board to ensure that there's not that confusion and mixture of membership. So this would allow the North Chautauqua County Water District to have a different voice from that of CBI.
Thank you, Patrick. So just to get some of the clarity on this, so the legislature will set the how the membership role is made up of. Is that correct?
Correct. I believe the additions aren't going to be specific people, but rather individuals that serve in those districts.
Correct. What it's made up of.
Correct. And so the legislature will set that, and then whoever happens to be in that district, whoever legislature would be on that North Chautauqua County Water District Board. And CBI, again, is made up of the 5 individuals from those villages and towns that buy the water directly from the North Chautauqua County Water District. And there's different things going on potentially with CBI in the future, and that's really left to them. Our concern is with the North Chautauqua County Water District. It's ensure that board is separate from CBI.
This new format is a fairly typical structure of board members based on like other water districts or other scenario situations.
I don't know if I can really say it's typical, but I think it makes a lot of sense. It involves the individuals that are directly involved with North Chautauqua County Water District, that they have knowledge of the water districts of the areas. And so, it makes sense rather than just put random legislators who are all very skilled and could serve on that district. It makes sense to place ones on that board that directly are impacted by those negotiations and what's going on with the water.
Thank you. And any questions from the committee?
This is tabled Monday, correct? Was this tabled?
Was it tabled on Monday? Yes.
Was it tabled on Monday? Do we vote or do we?
Why was it tabled on Monday?
Yeah, I guess that's the question. Why it was tabled on Monday?
It was tabled last month.
Last month.
Last month.
This was the second.
Okay, well, that's why it was before us again today. It was tabled last month because
And
we
then
needed
Monday
to
it
do
was
it.
left on the table today.
But it was, if I can speak to, I apologize, getting some more clarity. We've met, excuse me, Sorry. PJ Wendell County Executive. We've met with members of CBI and moving forward. So unfortunately, with the passing of John Walker, who was a longtime member of CBI and instrumental in CBI in the North County Water District, the idea has still pivoted as to the makeup of that board. So there was, the legislature is still going to be part of it, but then there was some more discussion with CBI as to the membership of CBI and then how those individuals. So the reason it was tabled and left on to die is there's still some work to be done. We're still discussing the final composition of that board. So again, if it were let to die, then it would give us time, to put this to rest and then come back and be able to have, again, after discussion, and again, most recently when these discussions were starting, we reached out, to several legislators who would be on that board. That was with, the guidance of certain members still being there. Unfortunately, with the passing of John Walker and relatively a lot of new people on that board, the consensus was from CBI that, in the water district to kind of take a step back and, let's wait and let's still to restructure again. So that's where we're at. So
Well, thank you for the clarity. I think, some knowledge. I think that a restructure is needed a little bit for the district, just from some in knowledge I have. But I think tabling it and doing a little more homework and making sure it's accurate is correct based on the information you shared. So
information that came back, to the point is, we didn't want to check boxes because of the comptroller's report, but there were specific things that needed to take place. One of the questions they had was, the largest client, really the only client of the water district was the same people that set the rates for. It's nice that you could set the rate for what you're going to pay. So that was a confusion. Not that anything was nefarious, and they always did a very sound job. But there's a lot of concern. There's a lot of discussion going on with CBI. So those members are working through all that, making sure they have some sound decisions going forward. So we're allowing that group to work itself through, and at the time we'll then again come back and give you more structure.
So procedural wise, do you wish us to table this again or?
Yeah,
how do you want us to-
we table it, then it will die, and then we bring it back.
Okay.
And we'll bring back. I think it's important definitely for at least you to be aware of why this is being tabled again and the ideas that we're formulating, that there's progress being made.
And again, with the passing of John Walker, it changed the scope of what we were doing.
Kind of put up.
Yeah, it kind of did.
Yeah, I recommend a motion to table.
Okay. I have a motion to table. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Thank you, gentlemen.
Carried. Thank you, gentlemen, for explaining that to us. Second item on our agenda today is local law introductory 723, a local law amending local law 13-22, providing for a management salary plan for county officers and employees, RE employee labor relations administrator for the Department of Human Resources.
Good morning. That's a mouthful. Debbie Mikowski, Director of HR. So what you have before you, a local law to create a position titled Employee and Labor Relations Administrator within Human Resources. This position will take the place of a formal title, Senior Personnel Tech Deputy Director of Human Resources. So for those of you who don't know, my Deputy Director has announced his retirement. He'll be done the end of September. So this position will replace the Deputy Director, kind of moving more for a more functional title to handle employee and labor relations. The new title is graded lower than the current Deputy Director. So there should be no impact to the budget.
Questions?
It's needed.
I support your decision if this is the way you want to go. So, well, other discussion. We don't need to vote on a local law. So,
Thank you.
thank you very much. First proposed resolution is the amend 2023 budget for Portland Pomfret Dunkirk Sewer District Design Phase of 1 and 1 study.
Good morning, Matt Olbeck, Director, Portland Pomfret Dunkirk Sewer District. This resolution is to amend the budget to cover the design phase of the I&I project to put us one step closer to, and hopefully make it more appealing for grant money to be one step closer to shovel ready. The design phase is $92,400. They currently have $214,000 in their fund balance. $214,816 in the fund balance.
What are you looking to add on to? Or just redesigning current
This is just
infrastructure?
fixing infiltration
Okay.
and inflow.
From
Just-
stormwater,
Yeah.
that sort of thing.
Yeah, to try to lessen the amount of excess water we're sending to the Fredonia plant.
Questions, comments?
Just to transfer.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next resolution today is a continuation of interim funding for North Chautauqua County Water District.
These two are consistent.
Who wants here to speak on this today? Anyone questions, comments on this particular resolution?
Which one?
Um, Number 4, continuation of the funding for the North Chautauqua Water District.
Great to have someone explain it.
You have any knowledge on this, Patrick? You know anything about this one?
I think Kathy Tampio spoke at Administrative Services, but another outcome of the recent comptroller's audit, they noted that we had not extended this resolution to authorize the funding to the North Chautauqua Lake. So it's just extending the time period in which we can, and the intent of that is just to kind of bridge the cash flow for the construction. And then once that's complete, we would issue, long-term bonds for those costs.
That's the reason why it's not issued.
Yes, understood. Under in that finding, there was some particulars that they disliked in the way it was working, and this was one of those items. So I'm glad we're correcting it. And making it
Well, this is a
accurate.
little different than that. This is just for that's that issue that I believe you're referring to is a separate accounting
Okay.
correction that we'll do. But this is just for the fact that we are, basically floating the cash to them for the construction period of the $4 million. And there hadn't been a resolution to update the end date for which we would do that. So that's what the
Okay.
purpose of this
Understood.
resolution is.
Thank you for the clarity.
Mhm.
Questions, comments?
No questions, Jim.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Thank you for explaining that. Next proposed resolution is transfer of foreclosed properties to Chautauqua County Land Bank Corporation.
Good morning, Kim Moline, Director of Real Property.
Morning. What do we have in front of us today?
Okay, so that resolution is the properties that the land bank chose to take for their program from the foreclosed properties we had before the auction started.
Questions, comments?
What does the land bank, are all these gonna be renovated or?
No, I think it's broken down. Hang on a second. Should be broken down. There should be some that they're gonna rehab, some they're gonna demolish, and some that they'll do in their side lot program.
Tom, what we do is in committee, I'm on the land bank committee. We go through all these properties and they kind of rank them and rate them. And sort of in a nutshell, what we try to do is grab the rehabable properties. We try to take the worst property in the neighborhood and make it the best property in the neighborhood. And hopefully that spills over to the whole neighborhood. Plus we're saving a house, quote unquote, saving a house. So those are the rehabs. And then the demolitions speak for themselves. Those get torn down. And then the side lots, we either try to get the neighbors to reacquire them, or sometimes if there's specific projects in mind, for instance, that Johnson Street, those are 4 adjacent properties. I'm not sure where that's going, but we were looking at it to hopefully be able to develop. It's nice to have 4, it's nice to just have 4 houses together, but it's kind of nice to have 4 empty lots because it makes it a little more marketable, buildable. And typically those side lots like that at the auction go for, they either don't sell or a very low price. So
Next, I have another question on the demolition. Is that responsibility of the county?
no, the land
No,
bank.
the land
is-
bank takes care of
The land
all
bank takes care
that.
of all demolition?
That's one of the beauties of the land bank is money is given by the state for demo projects that's not available to the county.
Is that work subbed out or is it done by county?
Was that?
Is it subbed out for demolition or does the county?
Yeah, there's certain contractors that I think they pretty much hire one because they get a better deal with the volume.
Just a little background, Tom, too. I sat in on the meeting here and we discussed this with properties, and they want to pull these properties prior to the sale too, so that's not the day of the sale. And then all of a sudden these
Oh, yeah, that
properties
one too did.
disappear. And then people say, well, geez, I was making special arrangements to possibly purchase those properties, and now they're not on the listing anymore, so.
I understand that part, so. Okay, great, thanks.
Any other questions, comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Next resolution is the distribution of mortgage taxes.
And that one's we do this twice a year. So this is from October 1st of 2022 to March 31st of 2023. And it's the distribution of the mortgage tax for the towns.
Questions, comments? All those in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Carried. Thank you. And next resolution is quit claim deeds.
This resolution is for the parcels that were reacquired by the property owners. They had up until the day before the auction to buy their properties back from the county. And that is what this resolution includes, those parcels.
Quite a few of them.
I did some quick math on this. It's about $290,000. So I look at any taxes paid.
It's good. I'd rather the people pay their taxes and keep their property. It's the right thing if
Right.
they can do that. And hopefully, you don't know anybody's situations or circumstances, but hopefully they don't end up back on the list again and they can kind of maintain what they have to do. So questions, comments? All those in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Carried. Next resolution is authorizing contract with Chautauqua Lake Central School for fueling of county motor vehicles.
Good morning, Patrick Slagle, County Attorney. The resolution before you is a contract with Chautauqua Lake Central School to be able to use their fuel pumps for refilling our vehicles. It's going to be a countywide contract, so any department can utilize it. In the past, EMS has had various different contracts with Village of Lakewood. I think that one's still active, and actually Chautauqua Lake Central School to be able to fill up their vehicles. And recently, with the purchase of the mobile health clinic bus, if anyone's toured, it's a very great thing, but we have to fuel it, and so it makes sense to utilize the fueling devices up here. So entering into this contract will allow us to then fuel our fleet of vehicles that we have.
Questions, comments?
Straightforward. Sounds like a good idea.
It's got to serve the people. It's got to get out there on the road.
Yeah, where is our closest county-owned fuel tanks from here?
I don't see a team card. I'm not quite sure of that with a
I'm just
closest.
curious.
I don't know.
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next proposed resolution is authorized agreement with Panama Central School District for school resource officer services.
Good morning, Rich Telford, Undersheriff, Chautauqua County. Going back to your last resolution, we are able to fuel at county tanks in Falconer, Sheridan, and Sherman. So there may be more county-owned tanks out there, but I know that's where some sheriff's vehicles get fuel directly from the county.
Well, thanks for the tidbit. No, I mean, it's costing us a little bit to go fill up there. That's all. But not a lot, but.
I'll advocate for Chautauqua Lake just as close to our offices as it is. So, so this resolution, I know we've been back and forth over the last couple months. We were able to enter into an agreement with Panama Central School for a school resource officer. We've had some personnel moves, and ultimately we were able to find an officer with some experience that was interested in taking this position. So we reached out to Panama, and one of the biggest differences, normally these run July 1st to the end of June. This one will start September 1st, just because of the timing. But we're glad that we're able to get a deputy assigned down to Panama.
Question, Mr. Chair. Please. Now, with this, the sheriff moving to that position, do you have a vacancy that you need to fill for road or?
We currently have a vacancy so separately, we currently have one vacancy that we have not filled. This has yet to create a vacancy. We are up in the air on another SRO position in the county and whether we're going to be able to fill that. And that's a yet to be determined thing that we're working on as we speak, and the sheriff's talking to the principal and superintendent. So it may open a position. We may lose, if you want to call it, lose an SRO position.
What's like the tenure for an SRO? Are these 1 year, 2 year? Are they stay there forever? How does that work?
So the contracts have been 1 year contracts. I don't know if they were different pre-COVID. Typically the SROs that we have in the schools are there year after year after year. One of our SROs in Silver Creek has been there 8 years, 9 years. One of the biggest hiccups, and again, keep bringing up the word COVID, pre-COVID, we had about 6 or 7 SROs in the school. COVID hit, funding was hit, budgets were hit, so the schools, several schools ended their contracts, and now they're getting back into it. So we have discussed, or at least, thrown out the idea of 2 or 3 year contracts, and the schools are a little leery of doing that, and I understand that. Just, they don't know what it's going to be like in 2 or 3 years from now.
So going back to pre-COVID, how many SROs were there in the county with number of high schools and schools?
I don't know off the top of my head.
This is going to bring our SRO count, I believe, to 8, and I believe we had 7 pre-COVID. There's one school district I know that had one for a year, and they've gone to a different type of school safety officer. It's a retired police officer. But I know Pine Valley previously, and they've brought it back. Frewsburg previously had one, brought it back. And then, like I said, Silver Creek I think is the longest running, and I'm just guessing 10 years. I think Deputy Johnson has been up there.
I think it's critical. I think it's very, very important that they're there. So I'm a huge advocate of more.
Agreed. Thank you.
And I'm going to add to that really quickly too. When it comes to these types of contracts, they're fulfilled based on a bid. So basically, whoever is fulfilling that position, they bid for the position. And, so heaven forbid, if there's a situation where nobody bids on one, then that kind of puts the administration in a position to where they sort of have to keep discussing and keep negotiating. So there's a lot of that to it too.
I just want to, thank the sheriff's office for being kind of fluid and working with the schools, and it is on again, off again relationship with some of them. Unfortunately, when it comes to school funding and budgets, as a school, they're looking at a budget and they say, well, we got to cut 100,000, and do we get rid of a teacher or an SRO? And they're like, well, bye SRO. Well, maybe next year, so, but it leaves the sheriff's department in a situation where they got to again off again. So
Correct.
It's hard to juggle around.
And I know in years past, we've been, a lot of times able to absorb that through attrition. And I do remember that when COVID hit and we lost at least 3 SRO positions, we had to lay off 3 officers. And that
Tough.
That was one of the worst things. I know the sheriff we tried to find ways and we couldn't do it at the time, and we had to lay them off. Luckily they got employed fairly quickly in another agency. So it worked out, but it is unfortunately nature of the business.
A side note with this too is research on SROs in schools. Been a good thing. I mean, are you seeing a difference? It's hard to track, but I'm sure that there is some sort of monitoring and tracking. But
there is, and there's studies out there. My personal take and what I always say is, what are you getting out of it? And if you're strictly looking at it as, the worst case scenario, active shooters, this, that, that, in my opinion, that's not why an SRO is there. They are there, for, it can be traffic safety in the parking lot or speed zones. It can be anything from teaching bicycle safety to kindergartners to driver's ed as a senior. It's interacting with the kids. It's recruitment. We have had applicants to the academy recently that said, when I was in high school, I got close to SRO so-and-so and I wanted to become a police officer. If somebody's looking at it as a preventative measure for an active shooter, in my opinion, that's not what an SRO's role is. I hope it never comes to that. It is a reason to have one, but in my opinion, it's the day-to-day, it's interacting with the kids. It's giving another adult that a child can turn to, whether it's just talking about home life problems, work problems, homework. And like I said, getting in and out of the classrooms from kindergarten to, and like you said, Mr. Pavlak, it's a tough decision as a school board member. It's very difficult to lay off a teacher and keep an SRO, and I understand that, but I truly believe in the program, and there's so many more benefits than truly the security of the building.
Sure. Yeah. Well, and even our ongoing drug and alcohol awareness is big, and if it's just a helpful deterrent too for some of the kids and some of the mischiefs they could get into in a school.
Yep.
And, a positive influence on a level of that nature is good too. I know that the schools struggle with kids vaping in school. Geez, Louise, you would think seventh graders are in the
It's not
bathroom
one thing, it's
vaping,
another.
but if you have an SRO walking around, you're a little more
Maybe a little more, yeah,
leery
Yeah.
about doing it.
yep,
We're all
absolutely.
kids once, I'm sure.
Yep. We don't want to talk about
Whole
that.
business. Any other questions, comments? All those in favor, please say aye. Opposed, carried.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your explanation.
Yep.
Next proposed resolution is authorized acceptance for gun-involved violence elimination give grant funds for 2023-2024.
Speak.
Is that district attorney or?
I vote yes. I can read it. If you read it,
You can read it.
unless they wrote it.
Does anyone have any questions or comments on it?
I do now.
Looks pretty straightforward. All those in favor, please say aye.
I
Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Next resolution is authorized acceptance of 2023 Crimes Against Revenue Program CARP funds.
signatures are on the second page. Second page.
Anyone have any questions, comments on this resolution?
These are going quick.
Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Next resolution is authorized use of Lake Erie Management Commission Capital Project H 8020-37011 funds for additional dredging in Barcelona Harbor. And we do have someone here to speak on that one. That is great.
Yes, I'm here once again.
Thank you.
My name's Dave McCoy. I'm the Chicago County Watershed Coordinator. I work within the planning, Office of Planning and Economic Development. As many of you may know, Barcelona Harbor has been recently dredged by the Army Corps of Engineers. When the Army Corps comes in and dredge, they dredge primarily within the federal channel that's established by law by the Rivers and Harbors Act decades ago. If there's any other work needs to be done, oftentimes there's an opportunity to piggyback on the Army Corps' contract, retain the contractor, offers some specific advantages because of mobilization. This equipment is big, expensive to operate. For instance, the tugs burn 55 gallons of fuel an hour when they're underway. So it's very costly initiative and effort to get them here. The town of Westfield has done additional dredging work. We've talked about helping them out at the LAMC all year long. The day before the pre-file deadline, they provided me with an invoice, a cost estimate for an additional day of dredging. That amounts to $26,000. We have the money in the capital account. We've used that for dredging in the past. We'd like to do so again.
Questions, comments?
I'm sure that's not even through.
When they dredge, just curiosity, so they have a dredge come in, where do they offload the stuff that they dredge? Do they put it on another dredge that carries it away? How does that process work?
You know, they have 2, sometimes 3 vessels. One is big enough to put a excavator on, 220, 300 class excavator. The one in Dunkirk was last year was a 1,000-yard machine, the kind of machine that comes in 3 or 4 truckloads. You don't move it around very often, so big
Yeah.
stuff.
Mhm.
And then they have what they call scows. They're bottom dump. They float primarily as pontoons or sponsons that are watertight. That forms a movable bottom. With cables, they close that. They put the dredge material in that. It sinks down because it's very heavy. Then they take it out to a approved dredge disposal area. In the case of Dunkirk, it's about a statute mile north of the harbor. In the case of Westfield, it's a little further out. So they take it way out there and then they let it go.
Dump her down.
It opens up, barge jumps up, they come back, and they get more.
And it all ends up in soap.
Cloudy waters that day. Poor
Pardon?
fish. Cloudy waters that day.
Not so much, not as much as you'd think.
Goes
Pretty
down.
much goes down to the bottom, stays there. You know, with respect to Dunkirk, there's an area that the walleye fishermen call the bump.
And that's
That
that's
is
where
a
they're
disposal area. It's a very popular fishing area because it offers a little bit of structure and a very flat bottom.
Well, thanks for the little bit of information on that. It's just interesting how that stuff gets there. And I think it's our seaways, the Great Lakes are a pretty good mode of transportation still today that's utilized more frequently than we know. You know, and you don't, I was in Alexandria Bay a while ago, and there's a lot of boats that come up and down, big boats, and they're not just, they're going through there, but they are coming through Lake Erie also. So
Yeah, the Great Lakes navigational system is 1,700 miles long. It's the largest freshwater deep draft navigation infrastructure in the world. So there is a lot of traffic on that. And locally, you know, I mean, if you ever happen to be in Barcelona Harbor during one of the major fishing tournaments, like the Southtown Shootout, there will be 100 boats there. The parking lot will be full. The access road will be stacked up, and there'll be boats and trailers up and down Route 5. Those people are buying fuel, they're buying food, they're buying bait, they're buying hardware. You know, big economic impact. It's hard to assess, but nonetheless, it's there.
any other questions, comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Next proposed resolution is authorize Chautauqua County Visitors Bureau at the local tourist promotion agency for matching funds program sponsored by the New York State Division of Tourism.
Good morning, Stephanie Nick, Special Projects Coordinator with the Department of Planning and Economic Development. So this is an annual resolution. The money does not come from the county. It's basically just designating the Chautauqua County Visitors Bureau as the not-for-profit to receive funds from state and federal agencies on the county's behalf to spend within the county.
Questions, comments? Not hearing any questions or comments. You explained it too well for us.
Oh, perfect. It's my first time. So.
You did great. You did a fantastic job.
Perfect. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's been brought to my attention that someone is here to speak to resolution 10 and 11. If anyone would want to have an explanation on those, would you guys want to revisit those and have an explanation, or are you okay? Bob?
I'm good.
I think we're okay. We'll keep moving on with our agenda. They have some late resolutions that are on our table this morning. We'll cover those. The first one is authorizing the 2024 levy of participants' share of Chautauqua County self-insurance plan workers' compensation costs. Thank you.
Good morning, Kitty Crow, Director of Finance. This is the annual resolution to show the workers' comp assessments for the next budget year. Overall, the plan costs have been reduced $620,000, so that's good news. And so this resolution just provides the allocation of the total cost of the plan for and sets the rates for 2024. And the handout just gives you more detail in terms of the individual changes for each municipality.
Everyone's been notified of this amount as far as these municipalities at this point.
So once the legislature adopts this resolution, then that they will, this will be their assessment. They do have a notification. They earlier this year, on an annual basis, we also, after we close the year, we provide like an exit liability so that anyone considering if they want to exit the plan knows what their buyout costs would be. And then this resolution sets the rate for next year. So they, by setting these rates, they then have all the information that they know what their next year rate is, and they would know what it would cost if they were to exit the plan.
If I recall, for the most part, most of these on this list were decreasing from what they were before, correct? Except for only a couple, right?
Yeah. So the second from the right column shows you the net change from last year to what the rates, this year to what the rates will be for next year. So anyone who's like the first two, they do change, but that would be as a result of either their payroll increased or their claims experience went up from last year.
I think also it's getting evened out a little bit by losing a couple of bigger customers, right? Isn't that?
Yeah, based on the change we made last year in terms of the way we allocate the costs to do by payroll as a component versus their assessments. I think it gives a more true cost to the participants.
Sure. No, and that's what the information I wanted is. It's a little more actual for them. I think it's a little better way of doing it. And this is, what we're seeing is it is a little bit more correct. And most of the people are probably that should be are seeing a little bit of a decrease, and the ones that maybe are paying a little more.
Yeah. I mean, there were some cases where municipalities' payroll went up, so that would, even though the whole plan is going down, their payroll went up, so maybe they didn't see as much of a decrease. If our plan costs were staying the same or going up, everyone would see an increase. But fortunately, our claims experience has been trending down, so we were able to reduce the plan cost for next year.
Jamestown's still on here.
Yes.
Must be they couldn't find it cheaper anywhere else.
No comment.
Any other questions, comments?
I guess I'd just like to say good work by Kitty and I was really in favor of this. We switched this last year, right? And I think this just kind of proves out that the right decision was made.
I agree, and that's why I had some questions on it in my
Mhm.
last comment. So
Thank you, but I will defer all of the credit to Dennis Brooks, who is the administrator of the plan. He does a good job really staying on top of claims and settling where we can. But I would also want to clarify that the total plan costs are not impacted by the method for allocating the costs, whether it's on payroll or assessment. So the total plan costs went down mainly because our claims experience has gone down.
sure. Any other questions, comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Next proposed resolution is titled Approving Labor Contract with CSEA Unit 6300. The dream team.
Quieter than last time.
A little bit.
Oh, okay.
Well, someone can get us started. What are we looking at?
Okay, Debbie McKenzie, Director of Human Resources.
Kitty Crow, Director of Finance.
Patrick Slagle, County Attorney.
So we are happy to announce that as of Monday at 4 p.m., we have a member-approved tentative agreement with CSEA 6300. It was actually 394 yeses. Sorry, I thought I had something else there. So as you can imagine, both sides came to the table with some hefty items. We won't go into any specific details on negotiations out of respect for that process. But the emphasis was, of course, on wages in the context of recruitment, retention, and inflation. Something that we've been talking about those topics for at least the last year. So we're now able to share with you the specific details of their tentative agreement so that you're able to approve the resolution with confidence. I believe what you have in front of you is summary of CSEA 6300 savings and cost document that Kitty just handed out.
How many
Okay.
people in this unit again? Just so you said 394 yeses, but not the no's. But how many?
I want to say it's over 700,
It's over
maybe
700.
750 total.
Thank you.
This is the largest union in the county.
Mhm. Okay, so for those of you who have gone through this before, you typically put together a financial impact summary, and I'm going to go through the points of the agreement and those impacts. So starting from the top there with wages, and on the second page are some notes that go along with each of the components. So again, another point I want to make before we get started is when we were settling our last 4-year agreement with CSEA and other bargaining units, I did, state at that time going forward, there won't be significant decreases because we had made some big changes to our health plan benefits the last time around. So there are fewer items that are going to offset increases going forward. So, our job was really to kind of minimize the increases or make sure that that we felt they are reasonable and could fit within our long-term financial goals. So the wage increase that we settled on with CSEA for the 4 years were 3%, 3%, 3.5%, and 3.5%. The next row down there where you'll see an average increase to move up one step. So one thing that was, as Debbie already mentioned, inflation has been a big factor. It's no secret that the county is in a healthy financial position. And then, with inflation in the cost increases for employees in their daily lives, we negotiated one additional step. So they would go up an additional step than normal in the first year. So that also was negotiated in the context of recruitment. We looked at a lot of comps and we wanted to, be competitive in terms of the wages that we are offering. We do very sensitive to that. We have a lot of openings right now, and we're really, struggling to attract employees, and we think this will help us. And therefore, the overall increase the first year would be about 6.5%, which includes the wage increase plus the additional step increment they'll receive January 1. Going down the page here, the next cost you'll see are one-time bonuses. We, in order to kind of protect the county budget in the context of, wage increases to the base pay will compound over time. So we wanted to balance between providing, the wages to the employees, but also not adding that to the base, which would compound over time to the county. So we did settle on some one-time bonuses. These bonuses will be paid in 2 installments during the year. Again, rather than pay them up front in the year and then maybe somebody retires next month, that having that second bonus payout later in the year, we think will help with retention throughout the agreement. In the first year, they will get that bonus without any strings attached, so to speak. But in the out years, we did tie the bonus to basically the tax cap and the inflation rate set by the comptroller. So we know that the tax cap is the lesser of inflation or 2%. So in years that inflation is below 2%, they would not get that bonus. The bonus is really meant to if inflation is higher, that we would recognize that employee wages, would be give them that bonus. And then it protects the county when inflation is lower. We're not giving a higher payout. We did also increase the amount for longevity, $10 for each year of service, but starting at 7 years of service versus 10. And one particular interest of the county executive is safety. As you probably know, I've heard him talk about that in many occasions over the years. And we were able to implement a footwear stipend. It's $100 per employee for certain positions. So they will be required to wear safety shoes if they're in a particular position. But that is also protects the county as well. We were able to eliminate what's referred to as a good attendance bonus. Well, it's not a drastic savings. I mean, it does create savings, but these savings don't include the administrative cost to administer those bonuses. They're generally paid out quarterly. It involves, tracking somebody's use of sick time, if they used it or didn't. Then paper forms get sent in and, processed through payroll. So, and we also felt that was just creating the wrong incentive. What generally happened is, I shouldn't say across the board, but oftentimes people would come to work sick so they could get this bonus and not use their sick time. And that's not what we want. So we'd rather create other incentives So we were happy that we were able to, that the union was willing to give this up. As far as benefits,
Can I ask a
Mhm.
question on that while we're, the good
Uh-huh.
attendance bonus? So I agree with it to a point, why was it initiated? Why was it in place? Like what people was it targeting back then? So,
I mean, it's been in place well before I, started with the county, but
so an example I have is like I've done this with say like a school. The school is beneficial because if someone is absent, they have to hire someone else for that day. So it's an
Correct.
additional cost. So they have this bonus to help save money, and that's when I was curious if it was for
yeah.
what people it's
Well,
covering.
you'll see it in when we talk about the next agreement, their good attendance bonus is increasing, and it is for a different reason. They are 24/7 operations. So when somebody calls off, there's a different impact. With
Sure.
this unit, we feel there should be other incentives for people to come to work. If they call off, it's not as much of an impact to someone. And again, we see people coming to work sick.
Sure.
So the
Has a
additional
worse
wages
effect.
that we gave, were to offset, smaller items like this that create an administrative burden.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm. Under the health insurance area, so there were some small changes here that, the dollars impact is not significant, but every little thing does add up. And again, these costs here, I'll just say each one of them do not include the administrative savings surrounding those changes. So for the flexible spending accounts now, we had very few people continuing to enroll in a flexible spending account. We now have health savings account, so they can still contribute to that if they're enrolled in the health plan. And then we had a chiropractic benefit that is now covered under our health plan, subject to the deductible. But previously, this benefit was that employees could be reimbursed a $20 copay up to $600. So that was a lot of paperwork coming in, verifying that they're not, haven't exceeded the limit, and then processing through accounts payable. So a heavy administrative burden there that will be going away. And then the other item there is just there was a benefit overlap, and we didn't have language in the contract to do anything different. So we just cleaned up the language. So if you have already received a health savings account, but then mid-year opt out, you wouldn't get both in any period. Then under retirement, a couple of things here. So first off, the cash out benefit. So when employees retire, they can either continue insurance for a defined period or they can cash out the value. Right now, the value is calculated based on their level of coverage at time of retirement. So if you're a family of 3 at the time of retirement, your cash out payment is calculated assuming you would be a family of 3 for the duration of your benefit period. But we see, since they raised the age for eligible dependents to be covered to age 26, some time ago, we do see more and more people retiring where they still have dependents age 20, under age 26, and that cash out payment kind of balloons for them. So the union did agree that we would now calculate based basically on what their eligibility is by month during their benefit period. So if they're only going to be, if they have a 5-year benefit period, but only the first year they would have been able to get family of 3 coverage, they'll get a cash out for family of 3 in year 1, and then a cash out for whatever level of coverage after that. So in some cases, that can be a significant savings. We also, under service credit, there's a 2-year window whereby the number of months of health insurance credit would be increased. So what that results in is a longer duration time that they will receive health benefits when they retire. We purposefully, and this provision was in the last contract at the end of the contract, and union was seeking to extend that for the duration of this, but we were able to negotiate that we'll offer it in the last 2 years of this agreement to kind of help with retention again, because we have been seeing just a continuation of retirements lately. And while it is, healthy, in a normal pattern, when we see too many at one time, it does put, it creates, problems for us. And so this will hopefully slow down a little bit and give us more time to, refill positions and consider, when somebody's retiring and plan for it better. So there's a two-year window for this increase. So hopefully a few people that might be considering retirement next year or the year after will stay on another year or two.
And I would say
And-
too,
yeah,
just
go
on
ahead.
that comment, I've already seen individuals, because the unions voted on this, ratified it, that were set to maybe retire, end of this year, early next year, who now decide to delay their retirement because it's incentive. So already we're seeing some positive impacts of
Mhm.
that, keeping these employees, because again, there's open spots throughout the county, and
Mhm.
we really don't want to be losing, some of our senior workers at this time with all that experience.
Yeah. And this will sunset at the end of the agreement, and the cost impact would really be in the future because it'll be just adding, some additional months on to their coverage, and it won't be like a one-time increase. It'll be a more gradual increase in those costs. All right. And then there's a few other items that generally relate to, I put it in the category of lost productivity or other administrative savings. Additional time off was important to the union. So we did make some changes regarding various pockets of time off. So the amount of vacation that somebody can accrue is increased from 30 to 35 days. So what that means is, right now, if you get up to, if you have 30 days on the books, you have to use vacation before you can accrue any more. This just increases that limit to 35. We did add 2 personal days. So it's currently at 2, and they now will have 4 personal days. And we increased the bereavement leave by 1 day. An area where we will see some other administrative savings is that we still have a group of employees that do not receive their pay stub notification by email. They get a paper stub, and we're going fully electronic at the start of this agreement. So all employees will receive notification of their pay stub by email. And that will eliminate the remaining checks that we're still printing. We'll still have to print checks for new employees just because there's a lag in terms of implementing the direct deposit. But, we still have, printing, stuffing envelopes, distributing. And so we'll eliminate that step. And it will also help employees just to utilize our HR portal more. There's a lot of other information that they can access on the portal. They can see their accruals. They can do open enrollment. If they want to print a W-2 from, 5 years ago, they can do that from the portal. So we want to direct people there more and more because it does save time for Debbie's staff and my staff when people ask for information that they could otherwise self-serve. Okay, so those are all the major impacts. There's a few other miscellaneous items that did not have a significant financial impact or were just about work rules. So on the bottom here, the highlighted row, I just want to clarify that, the summary, the 4 years, 2024 through 2027. So in the first year, overall, these costs are projected to increase our cost by $4.4 million. And then by 2027, they would increase to $10.4 million. So if you add up each year's costs, that would get you to the total in the total column of $29.4 million. I just wanted to make that distinction that, each year is the amount. If we had 0 cost increases, it's comparing to that number. So the next three rows there just kind of break down a little bit more in terms of giving you a sense of how this would impact our projections and the levy. So when the base scenario, what I'm referring to is in our 5-year projections, we typically have included, a wage increase in those projections, and generally we use 3%. So this just shows you, assuming, if you're comparing what our 5-year model projects to what we settled on, this is the difference. So $2.8 million more than what we were showing in our 5-year projection before now. Of that, the general fund cost would be about $2.3 million, as roughly 84% of the workforce is our general and fund employees. The other employees work in an enterprise fund like sewer district or landfill. Additionally, the projected local share impact, which would be net of reimbursement. So of our workforce, general fund workforce, a percentage of those costs are reimbursed by state or federal aid. So bottom line, I'm projecting that bottom row there, that in the first year, about $1.6 million would have an impact on our tax levy. So as we mentioned last month, we are seeking your approval or acting on this contract this month so that we can address this as we're preparing the tentative budget. So we have about a week or so left that departments are entering their budgets, and then through the month of August where we're doing various reviews and fine tuning. So this will help us with that effort. Any questions?
I just have a comment.
Yeah.
I just want to thank you all for doing the hard work. This being done is going to, I'm sure, alleviate a lot of issues and headaches down the road. So I want to thank you for doing what you did. It's a lot of work involved. So
Yes.
I appreciate it. I couldn't do it. I just couldn't, because it'd all be a no. That was nothing. Thank you.
I do have some questions.
Uh-huh.
Of the 750 employees, would you say the majority of them are at the higher step or a lower step? Do you know that?
I don't have those statistics off the top of my head, but I mean, because we have seen, for a while, we had kind of plateaued and we saw so many people at the top step. And so it was helping us in a way because there's no further step for them to go to. So
Sure.
our wages costs kind of leveled out for a period a while back. But we've seen some more turnover. So now that we have more younger people, newer people in the workforce, it's I think averaged out. I haven't looked at those statistics in a little while, but I can get those.
Some of my statistics, so the math that I've done there, the average income or salary for those people is around 63,000. Is that correct?
It's generally not been that high in terms of our average wages, but
So that's why I asked the higher step, lower step, right? So
Yeah.
what is the average for this unit? Would you say a good average?
In the past, it's been more between $45,000 and $50,000. I didn't.
So there must be quite a few more on that higher step, because if you take that 47,
There's more people kind of more in the middle of our step scale than at either end. So and not step scale, but grades.
Yep.
So there's more people between, grade 16 and 18 than there are people at grade 2 or 4 or 20.
I
So,
understand. Do you
but
have an
I can
idea?
generate the statistics. I don't have a general idea off the top of my head.
I just was curious
Yeah.
what the average salary was for the group, and also, what that is in relation with the rest of the county. I know some of that information has been put out. I usually try to pay attention to that. So each town, I forget what the information in that literature is, but they'll put it out for each township and a total county one in each township, what the average salary is for those areas.
Yeah.
And I know, I haven't seen that in a few years, but it was always surprising to see what those were in different
Yeah.
areas. And I just was curious where the county stood with their current average wage versus the rest of the county? And
Yeah.
guess
I have a
it's-
I have a template that calculates that. I just
Okay.
don't. In the last time around that we negotiated, I do know it was between $45,000 and $50,000 was the average.
Mhm.
A couple, wage increases since then. So, I'd
I get it.
imagine it's
Yeah.
between 50 and 55 at this point, but we can easily get that information for you.
In some of my recollection of, it's been, I forget the agency that put that out. It was, but 5 years ago, some of those averages were 45,000 for a lot of those towns,
Mhm.
and I always use that because, those areas were you're looking at other budgets for municipal people or
Mhm.
school people or something, and then so you have a populated area that the average income is 40,000, and all the city employees or the school employees are making 90. It's like,
Mhm.
well,
Yeah.
But I just was curious where the county stood and if this puts
Uh-huh.
us in a good position for that retention and retaining, I know, and recruitment. And so it's important that we're correct. That's all too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Questions, comments?
I took notes.
Thank you for the work that you've all done on this and the rest of the committee. And we're thankful that you were able to come to an agreement. I know it's quite a process for both parties, so that's good.
It was a good negotiation. It was very fair back and forth. I mean, we had a very great dialogue with.
The yelling, screaming wasn't.
No, it was
Slam doors.
Minimum. It was a minimum.
That's why I didn't.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Next resolution
Oh, yeah.
in front of us today is approving labor contract with CCSEA.
Okay. So, this agreement is, there's some similarities and rationales that are consistent with the previous agreement we talked about. Did you already print it out?
Mhm.
Oh, the one I sent.
I
Okay.
did. Yeah.
So where we settled with the corrections unit and the CCSEA is the generally the corrections unit at the jail. They have about 60, no more,
118
members.
118.
69 yes votes as of last night. So theirs has been ratified as well.
and this is a combination of the correctional officers, dispatch.
Dispatch.
I
Yep.
think there's some cooks in there, but pretty much the jail.
Jail operation. So, we settled on the similar format here. Wage increases of 3.5% for each year of the agreement. Additionally, they will also move up one step as of January 1st. And generally for the same reasons that we did the additional step increase was really to focus on recruitment and retention. We also settled on one-time bonuses for this unit. The bonuses for this unit are $1,500, and their payment schedule is for October of each year. So again, scheduling that payment not in two increments, but we negotiated one payment, but later in the year so that the employee would need to stay that long during the year to receive the bonus. Longevity was increased from $50 to $75, but we did not change the time in which they would start earning longevity. And as we already kind of talked about a little bit, their good attendance bonus was increased from $200 to $250. And, as we already talked about, good attendance is more critical at the jail because of the nature of their 24/7 operation. If somebody calls off, oftentimes it's forced overtime for the person that's already there, and avoiding those situations is in the interest of employees there and just in terms of the county, in terms of additional costs that are incurred.
Should be a savings at the end.
Well, you're right. I could probably calculate a savings if I'm not showing the offset to reduced overtime. You're right. And they had a physical fitness bonus that we settled on an increase to that. Same changes with regard to flexible spending accounts. We've eliminated those. They had, 3 people that were contributing to those, so I didn't even put a savings there. But and then that opt-out HSA overlap. We did make some similar changes on retirement benefits, and in this case, this unit, right now there's sick time on the books at the time of retirement can be converted to health insurance, but there's a cap on it. So we have in this agreement, they can use all of their sick time towards the retirement calculation. But again, we think this is the right incentive because any sick time they're not using means they're not calling off and increasing overtime. So we were okay with that, extending that. It does sunset at the end of this agreement. So it would not continue unless it was negotiated again in the next agreement. We also did the same proration of the cash out for retirement benefits based on their eligible dependents for the duration of their benefit period. We added the Juneteenth holiday. That's in line with CSEA contract. They had already added Juneteenth for this year. We accelerated the time period in which additional vacation can be accrued. But there was no increase to the vacation amount. You could just earn it sooner. Personal leave was 1 additional day was added, and a lot, so much is talked about during this contract with regard to time off because it is very difficult. It's kind of a whole different ballgame when requesting time off for employees working at the jail because of minimum staffing levels that we have to have. So, but it is very important to them. So we feel like we settled on a good arrangement here that, you would get that additional day, assuming you didn't have any sick leave in the prior year. And we increased the bereavement leave. So down at the bottom, the net impact there, the highlighted bar shows the annual cost for each year. So costs increased from $897,000 to roughly $2 million by the last year of the agreement, totaling $5.7 million over the duration of the contract. And the variance from our base scenario is that final row there. There's no, I didn't calculate any type of reimbursement. I mean, while there are, grants and things that some of the sheriff's wages do cover, generally they're not at the jail. So this would be the projected cost. And, as you can see, there are some differences between the 2 contracts, and that's always going to be the case. So you can't always just compare them to one another. There's a lot of other factors involved. I do have a chart that I'd created in the past that just shows, like over a 20-year period, if you had a starting wages here and you increase those wages by each contract throughout that time, are we ending up at roughly the same place? And we are. So I've also tracked that against inflation over that same time period, and we're on track. Not, this gets us to be, right in line with inflation over that time period. And I would also like to recognize my coworkers, Debbie and Patrick. This was their first time around in negotiations, and I think we made a great team, and they did a great job.
Again, in good negotiations too. We
Mhm.
worked very well with this unit and their lead counsel, and as negotiations go, they have certain desires, we have certain desires, and we work together to meet in the middle. And
Mhm.
I think just like the previous agreement, this really focuses on recruitment retention.
Mhm.
Was there any kind of intimidation because they have guns? Or,
They don't carry.
you know?
That's
Yeah.
the deputies next year when we.
Next year will be the
Well, and in all fairness, we did have the sheriff at the table too.
Yeah.
So, both sides.
Yeah.
Intimidation.
No, generally this, yeah, I'll just reiterate what Patrick said. I mean, both unions were very collaborative, at the table and recognize our position and, I think the outcome at the end was good.
It's a lot easier.
Mhm, it does.
And they were both very agreeable to starting earlier in the year so that we could meet this time period of the year to be able to incorporate the changes into the budget.
I've been over to the jail and visited. I try to make a yearly visit. And this year I went over and, I want to thank the personnel at the jail for doing what they do. It's an environment every day that they work in, that if you don't see it, this
Yeah.
is well-earned money. And I agree. It's a good contract. One thing that I do always get is from some of the employees over there is a drive for a state level. So currently, this unit can retire after 25 years of service, and they'd like to see that decrease to 25 or to 20.
Yeah.
Because, and I'll say I agree with them on that because any prison guard that I've known has changed after they've been in a prison
It's a tough
guard
job, yeah.
situation for a year, 10 years.
They change.
They change.
Yeah.
And so, I think the 20 years is deserved if the
Yeah.
state would ever entertain that. So I'll just, whatever push I have forward is to entertain that 20-year retirement for those, that
Yeah.
unit. But thank you for the negotiating team
Sure.
here, that you work with them and also for the work that they do over there. And that's good.
It's very interesting too when you mentioned that. We talked about some of the the increase into the good attendance bonus, and some things that many people don't know is about, and I didn't know that. I learned about the forced overtime. Is that you work your shift, and if someone calls in,
Gotta stay
you're about to
on.
walk out the door and your shift, and they say you got to stay for another shift. And so you're right. I mean, there's a lot that's different over there compared to other the bargaining units. And so I think we worked to recognize that, and it worked out well.
Fantastic.
Good. Any other questions, comments? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So that portion of our meeting is through as far as our proposed resolutions and our late proposed resolutions. The only other item is on our agenda. One presentation has been changed for next month. So our last item is discussion. It's the organization of the finance department. If people needed to go use the bathroom for a minute, does anyone have to go? We could take a 5-minute recess. 5-minute recess. We'll be right back to do that.
You can go or leave. Don't ask any questions. You haven't seen it.
I haven't, no. So let's reconvene, and our discussion item today is the regarding the reorganization of finance department. So
Okay, so.
3-2.
Yeah.
Really, really is.
I missed it last night.
That's okay.
Okay, so about a year ago, we started a project to take a look at how our fiscal operations are structured throughout the county, and if there was any better way of structuring them. So we had a work group put together and have been looking at a plan over the course of a year. A little bit earlier this year, we kind of unveiled that to department heads, and then on June 7th, we had a presentation with a broader group of fiscal staff to share with them, the outline of the plan we want to go forward with. So cat is out of the bag, and we're now want to share that information with you as well. This slide deck was from that presentation, and I will send it out to all the legislators, after today, because toward the bottom it also includes FAQ that came up during, ahead of time through our work group process, but also then in the meetings that came out. So you can read through that. All right. So what did we want to address? A variety of items from right now. The structure is that we have a core finance department that, we handle accounts, process accounts payable, payroll, purchasing, which is already centralized now. Treasury functions, cash management, the budget directors under the umbrella, though has a dotted line report to the county executive because the budget director is appointed by the county executive. Insurance liability, workers' comp program, and then just our systems administration. Then each department has their own fiscal responsibilities in terms of processing their invoices once they come in, accruing revenues at the end of the year, monitoring their budgets, developing their budgets. And some departments have a big fiscal unit like DSS, and some departments don't. They have an admin person that does a variety of tasks, including fiscal tasks. So in that context, we do see from the department to department, we have some inconsistencies or lack of knowledge in some of these processes. We really lack a clear promotional track for people in fiscal positions, and there's really not a good succession plan because everyone's kind of scattered around. We also found through this work group process that some departments are utilizing slightly different titles. They might be at the same grade level, but in some cases we see an operations assistant handling fiscal tasks, whereas another department might use an account clerk or a senior account clerk. And each of those themselves have different promotional tracks based on the title that they're in. And so longer term, we want to, kind of have everyone that's in a financial track in the appropriate title to promote within that financial track. We also find, this would happen on a normal basis, but it did especially impact us during COVID when we saw some people retire unexpectedly, or if we have somebody goes out on a medical leave or planned or unplanned, there just leaves a gap in the department. And if it's a small department that maybe just has a couple fiscal staff and one person is out unexpectedly, you can't just pull somebody from another department and say help out over here because of the way things work from contractual basis and civil service. It's not that simple. So we want to be able to provide a structure where we can do more cost training and have a plan for if somebody is going to be out. We also see some staff, kind of alluded earlier, that are not fiscal people in a small department, but they still are tasked with doing certain responsibilities, and really that's not their core expertise. And so they might struggle with this. Then it creates a burden for them because they kind of get stressed out sometimes doing those things. And then it ends up kind of on our plate in finance to help out more, train or retrain. If somebody's only doing something once or twice a year, they don't remember, then they have to be retrained or ask more questions. So it takes a lot of time away from other things that we could be doing. Right, Todd? So we also know that some department heads, that's not their core competency either. So they might not be the best suited person to train their employees. I mean, generally speaking, people in finance will train any new hires on our processes when they're hired or their duties change. But we'd like to see fiscal staff being supervised by other fiscal staff so they can provide the right training and guidance and staff development. And from our perspective too, we don't really have a good way to affect change in another department because we don't supervise those people directly. And they sometimes might look to us that, okay, you're not my supervisor. So, it doesn't happen all the time, but we just would like to improve those relationships. So, like I said, we formed a work group last year. We worked through a lot of ideas, and we also conducted a fiscal survey, which I'll talk about more a little bit later, but basically had each department head kind of identify who in their department are doing certain fiscal tasks and how much of their time that they're doing it. So as I mentioned, we have met with department heads just to let them know this was something we are looking at, gave them periodic updates, but earlier this year kind of gave them this presentation. And so now they will kind of be fine tuning that list because as we move forward, they'll need to specifically identify anyone that will be transferring. So this is our proposed org chart. What's new here is just that second division there, which we're calling department fiscal management. And so any employees transferring from the other departments would fall under this division. All the other divisions here, are the same or what exists already in the finance department. So to expand on the division of fiscal management, we are breaking this down to align groups, teams, whatever you want to call them, that will be aligned with each of the legislative committees. They'll be overseeing this group in its entirety would be a director of administration. So this title was formerly what Val List's title was in, and she oversaw, 2 departments, but essentially this will be providing the direction and the oversight to drive the review and update of any policies and procedures, creating that, vision for consistency across the division. And also another component that's come up more recently is with compliance, because the compliance regulations have changed, and there is a component that's fiscally related that that person there can focus on the compliance requirements for the county along with the compliance officer. So we have grouped these subdivisions, like I said, by legislative committee. So as an example, the human services, the second one there. So there would be a team that would focus on all of the departments that roll up under the human services committee. And that top person, and probably some of the people within that organization would have that direct line, dotted line reporting to the department head. So we want to make sure the department heads still feel like they have their person to help them, with their fiscal matters. And then the boxes down below represent the categories of work that will be performed in this overall division. So budgeting, planning, any reporting or analysis that needs to get done, all of our invoice processing, and then claims and billing. So those are generally the things that some of the departments are doing now, but we want to create better consistency, cross-training, and provide a promotional track. So for example, in a promotional track, maybe somebody starts out in one subdivision and then a promotion comes up, they can go over to another division. Now they're learning more about more of the operations of the county. Somebody moving up in the organization, that might put them in a good position to be a budget director when that position comes up again. And they would have already gained a more broad knowledge of more county departments than just one. Or they might move over into, someday Todd might retire, and, somebody learning more about the different operations and accounting of each of the different departments, which can be, very different from one another, would position them better to move into a position like that. Right now, it's so disconnected. We have people in like mid and entry level, and then we have more senior people, but not a lot of people in that middle area. As far as invoice processing, go ahead.
A question I think that I have that kind of fits in this
Uh-huh.
category really well that I want to ask. I serve on the Office of the Aging Advisory Council.
Mm-hmm.
A concern that they have is, so their department is so very specific of billing and all that precise. A concern that they have is that they're going to lose that sense of disconnect. And you said that obviously the department head is still very integral part of that.
Yeah. So I've met with Mary Ann, I met with her and her team, and, to a certain extent, every department could say the same thing.
I understand
But
that.
I'm very sensitive to that. And really what we're not, I'll make the distinction in terms of how decisions are made. So the department head is still responsible for their fiscal, for their budget, for developing their budget, deciding what goes into their budget. It's just that the group they have now is really going to continue to do the same stuff that they're doing now. They would be supervised as far as fiscal responsibilities, how to do them by people in the finance department.
Mm-hmm.
So the department head is still 100% responsible for their operations and determining what's in their budget and how they're spending their money. How they process the invoices, how they do accruals, how they are monitoring revenues, those process decisions will be focused more under the finance department and that direction given under finance. But there are a lot of departments we're not. And another question you'll see in the FAQ, the number one question is, well, where's everyone going to sit? We're not physically moving people right now. At some point, there might be, if there's an opportunity to co-locate some people, so like all the human services fiscal people can co-locate. I mean, for the most part, they're all in the HRC building already. Right now, they might just be on different floors. So I do want to address and develop a sense of team. But if one of OFA's fiscal people left to go to another department right now, then there's a gap in OFA and no one to fill that gap. And that's really what we are trying to address, so that there's less, okay, now what do I do? And I don't have somebody to fill that gap and provide more flexibility. So I think over time, I think we'll have a stronger core competency in these sorts of things. But, I'm very, I've, had separate meetings with some department heads to kind of talk a little bit more about, their concerns so that they can be addressed. And in some cases, as we move forward, we might, we'll talk in just a minute on the next steps and timeline, but what I envision at this point is we'll kind of move forward with groups of departments at a time, not all at once. Additionally, we have to look at, in some cases, differently elected officials and the sewer districts, because the sewer districts have a board. And, there's certain, for elected officials, the sheriff specifically, they have a dedicated fiscal unit. And being an elected official, we're going to structure it more likely where his fiscal unit will have a dotted line into finance rather than the other way around, just for the sake that it's elected, and we'll treat it differently. And it might end up being something like that with another department, like such as OFA too. They might, we can look at that type of thing. And like I said, so each department as we go might have their own caveat. We want to drive as much consistency as possible, but where there needs to be a one-off, we'll consider it.
Yeah, no, and I kind of alluded to that in the advisory meeting that, we want it to be easy and we want it to also flow nice and it's not so specific where it can't be altered during the process to make it work for each department. So I said, don't be worried. And things will still get billed properly and tracked the way they should. It's just a matter of how it's done. It might be just look a little different. So.
Yeah. And I just like to emphasize too, I mean, it's more about building the skills of the people that are doing this work. And we feel that we have more expertise for those skills in the finance department and can foster that knowledge. With regard to invoice processing, once we're kind of all transitioned, one step we plan to take is to have one address for all invoices to be sent to. Right now, they get sent to all over the county. Somebody's out on vacation or on a leave, things show up in somebody's inbox, and oh, by the way, it's a couple of months later and the bill isn't paid. Things like that, or at year end, an influx of invoices or payments or travel claims creates a bottleneck at year end and impacts how we might accrue expenses and things like that. So we want to smooth that out a little bit more. So departments will still have a responsibility to approve invoices that are paid for their department. It's just they'll just be routed electronically, different than they are now. So we do feel that this structure will, address, the concerns that and goals that we are trying to reach. So just going to move on here to kind of our next steps, or what the process involves to actually transfer the position. So what's the process technically? It's the civil service process. It's called the transfer function. We've done it before on a smaller scale from, time to time. But it starts with the county executive making an order that the fiscal duties A, B, C, and D will be performed by the Department of Finance. And so then what that kicks off is the department heads then have to identify the employees in their department that are primarily doing those tasks. And that list will be posted, and HR will provide notice to those employees individually. And they have so many days to respond to accept the transfer. If they don't accept the transfer, there is, unless they can fit into a different position within the department, their position is essentially eliminated at that point, and there would be a layoff. They would be on a preferred list. Now, I hope this doesn't happen. I hope that we can address anyone's concerns about the transfer, and so that anyone that is identified just moves over and there's no impact to them. But we disclosed that during the meeting because we wanted to have transparency on the process. Additionally, employees who are not on the list have a way to petition to say, no, I should be on the list too because I do those duties, and then that would be reviewed by HR. So we had hoped to get that order out by the end of June, but we've had a delay in this timeline just for a variety of reasons. One being the budget is now kicked off, and we've been struggling filling some other vacancies. And in order to move forward, I was hoping to have a couple of key positions filled. We do have the director of administration position starting next week, so that'll be very helpful in leading this transition. And additionally, as Debbie mentioned earlier in the meeting, Ken Westfall has announced his retirement in September. And because this process impacts HR, I want to be mindful of their role in the process and not start it until they're going to be ready to provide those notices and deal with the things that they need to do on their end. So we'll probably roll this out, like I said earlier, groups of departments at a time. But my current timeline is that, late August, early September is when we'll put the order out, and then from there, hopefully transition everyone by, no later than the first quarter. Overall, we're not, one question that came up, I think it was you that asked, for Jay, how many hours will people be working? So the finance department is a 40-hour department right now. So anyone transferring in that is not currently working 40 would be offered 40 hours. They do, by right of their collective bargaining agreement, can decline and remain at 37 and a half or 35. But we do see in a lot of cases people want 40 hours, but they do have the right to decline, and then they just would remain at whatever hours that they're currently at. This restructuring is not meant to necessarily downsize. It's ideally budget neutral. If it results in a reduction in total costs, it's possible just maybe through attrition or just, but I'm really looking at it as a budget neutral exercise. And we've emphasized to employees it's really not meant to create layoffs in any way. So, I think those are the main points. Tom, did I miss anything from the other presentation?
Fantastic presentation.
We'll just keep you informed as we move forward. As far as the budget goes, developing the budget for any vacancies right now, what we're doing is we are refilling them under finance, so we don't have to go through that transfer exercise later. So we're just putting any new hires under the Department of Finance. A couple other we have about 10 open fiscal positions across the county right now, which is a lot more than usual. And so, again, hope there's a couple more positions I'd like to have in place before we really start to move forward. And in case you didn't know, Sam Zafuto has taken a position over in Human Services. So he's transferred there. We'll be refilling his position at the DPF. And then with Jen Swan's appointment to Budget Director, the sheriff's already started the process to refill her position at the sheriff's office. So a few bigger changes kind of slows this process down until the dust settles a little bit.
Fill one gap to create another.
Yes. Once we have all the internal changes completed, then hiring the backfills, hopefully will go smoothly. But right now, when it's just kind of musical chairs right now, it creates some challenges. So I'll send this out. Like I said, there's some FAQ down at the bottom that was developed ahead of time, with anticipation of some questions, but then there were just more questions during the, general session with the employees. So those were added to, or more clarification was provided in the FAQ. So, a couple people have raised concerns, and we're just trying to work through those changes hard for it's a big change for the organization. So, but we've also gotten positive feedback as well. Okay. So that concludes my presentation.
Change is necessary. You have to keep evolving and growing. I think this is great.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, I forgot to take my allergy pill this morning. Something's making me really itchy.
You gotta take two. Take Claritin and get Flonase as well.
Yeah, I have that too now.
It doesn't work.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Anything else under other?
No, I'd like to move to adjourn.
In a second. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, carried. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Anything else?